Okay, so I'm going to read from A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, which is a brilliant book. And if you haven't read it yet, I suggest you do seek it out. So it's a story about a boy whose mother is dying from cancer, and a monster comes to visit him and tells him a series of stories. I'm just going to read you some of the first story that he tells him. Long ago, the monster said, before this was a town with roads and trains and cars, it was a green place. Trees covered every hill and bordered every path. They shaded every stream and protected every house, for there were houses here even then, made of stone and earth. This was a kingdom. It was a kingdom small but happy, for the king was a just king, a man whose wisdom was born out of hardship. His wife had given birth to 4 strong sons, but in the king's reign he had been forced to ride into battles to preserve the peace of his kingdom. Battles against giants and dragons, battles against black wolves with red eyes, battles against armies of men led by great wizards. These battles secured the kingdom's borders and brought peace to the land, but victory came at a price. One by one, the king's 4 sons were killed, by the fire of a dragon, or the hands of a giant, or the teeth of a wolf, or the spear of a man. One by one, all 4 princes of the kingdom fell, leaving the king only one heir, his infant grandson. By and by, the king's wife succumbed to grief, as did the mother of the young prince. The king was left with only the child for company, along with more sadness than one man should bear alone. I must remarry, the king decided, for the good of my prince and of my kingdom, if not for myself. And remarry he did, to a princess from a neighbouring kingdom, a practical union that made both kingdoms stronger. She was young and fair, and though perhaps her face was a bit hard and her tongue a bit sharp, she seemed to make the king happy. Time passed. The young prince grew until he was nearly a man, coming within 2 years of the 18th birthday that would allow him to ascend to the throne of the old king's death. These were happy days for the kingdom. The battles were over, and the future seemed secure in the hands of the brave young prince. But one day the king grew ill. Rumour began to spread that he was being poisoned by his new wife. Stories circulated that she had conjured grave magics to make herself look far younger than she actually was, and that beneath her youthful face lurked the scowl of an elderly hag. No one would have put it past her to poison the king, though he begged his subjects until his dying breath not to blame her. And so he died, with still a year left before his grandson was old enough to take the throne. The queen, his step-grandmother, became regent in his place, and would handle all affairs of state until the prince was old enough to take over. At first, to the surprise of many, her reign was a good one. Her countenance, despite the rumours, was still youthful and pleasing, and she endeavoured to carry on ruling in the manner of the dead king. The prince, meanwhile, had fallen in love. She was only a farmer's daughter, but she was beautiful and also smart, as the daughters of farmers need to be, for farmers are complicated businesses. The kingdom smiled on the match. The queen, however, did not. She had enjoyed her time as regent and felt a strange reluctance to give it up. She began to think that perhaps it was best that the crown remained in the family, that the kingdom be run by those wise enough to do it, and what could be a better solution than for the prince to actually marry her.
An extract from Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. Part 1, Chapter 1. Across the Narrow Sea, Putney, 1500. So now get up! Felled, dazed, silent, he has fallen, knocked full length on the cobbles of the yard. His head turns sideways. His eyes are turned towards the gate, as if someone might arrive to help him out. One blow, properly placed, could kill him now. Blood from the gash on his head, which was his father's first effort, is trickling across his face. Add to this, his left eye is blinded, but if he squints sideways with his right eye, he can see that the stitching of his father's boot is unravelling. The twine has sprung clear of the leather, and a hard knot in it has caught his eyebrow and opened another cut. So now get up! Walter is roaring down at him, working out where to kick him next. He lifts his head an inch or two and moves forward on his belly, trying to do it without exposing his hands, on which Walter enjoys stamping. What are you, an eel? his parent asks. He trots backwards, gathers pace, and aims another kick. It knocks the last breath out of him. He thinks it may be his last. His forehead returns to the ground. He lies waiting for Walter to jump on him. The dog, Bella, is barking, shut away in an outhouse. I'll miss my dog, he thinks. The yard smells of beer and blood. Someone is shouting down on the riverbank. Nothing hurts. Or perhaps it's that everything hurts, because there is no separate pain that he can pick out. But the cold strikes him, just in one place, just through his cheekbone as it rests on the cobbles. Look now, Walter bellows. He hops on one foot, as if he's dancing. Look what I've done! Burst my boot, kicking your head! Inch by inch forward. Never mind if he calls you an eel, or a worm, or a snake. Head down, don't provoke him. His nose is clotted with blood, and he has to open his mouth to breathe. His father's momentary distraction at the loss of his good boot allows him the leisure to vomit. That's right, Walter yells. Spew everywhere! Spew everywhere on my good cobbles. Come on, boy, get up. Let's see you get up. By the blood of creeping Christ, stand on your feet. Creeping Christ, he thinks. What does he mean? His head turns sideways. His hair rests in his own vomit. The dog barks. Walter roars. And bells peal out across the water. He feels a sensation of movement, as if the filthy ground has become the Thames. It gives and sways beneath him. He lets out his breath. One great final gasp. You've done it this time, a voice tells Walter, but he closes his ears, or God closes them for him. He is pulled downstream on a deep, black tide.
Hi there, this is Miss Street and I'm going to read an extract from The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The boy continued to listen to his heart as they crossed the desert. He came to understand its dodges and tricks and to accept it as it was. He lost his fear and forgot about his need to go back to the oasis because one afternoon his heart told him that it was happy. Even though I complain sometimes, it said, it's because I'm the heart of a person, and people's hearts are that way. People are afraid to pursue their most important dreams because they feel that they don't deserve them, or that they'll be unable to achieve them. We, their hearts, become fearful just thinking of loved ones who go away forever, or of the moments that could have been good but weren't, or of the treasures that might have been found but were forever hidden in the sands. Because when these things happen, we suffer terribly. My heart is afraid that it will have to suffer, the boy told the alchemist one night as they looked up at the moonless sky. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second of the search is a second's encounter with God and with eternity. Every second of the search is an encounter with God, the boy told his heart. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, every day has been luminous, because I've known that every hour was part of the dream that I would find it. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, I've discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not had the courage to try things that seemed impossible for a shepherd to achieve. Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits them. Unfortunately, very few follow the path laid out for them. They just go along and see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world does indeed turn out to be a threatening place. We, their hearts, speak more and more softly, for we don't want people to suffer because they don't follow their hearts. Why don't people's hearts tell them to continue to follow their dreams? Asked the boy. Because that's what makes our hearts suffer the most, and hearts don't like to suffer. What you still need to know is this. Before a dream is realised, the soul of the world tests everything that was learned along the way. It does this so that we can, in addition to realising our dreams, master the lessons we've learned as we've moved toward that dream. That's the point at which most people give up. That's the point, as we say in the desert, that one dies of thirst just as the palm trees have appeared on the horizon. Every search begins with beginner's luck and ends with being severely tested. The darkest hour of the night comes just before the dawn.
People do not give it credence that a 14-year-old girl could leave home and go off in the winter time to avenge her father's blood, but it did not seem so strange then, although I will say it did not happen every day. I was just 14 years of age when a coward going by the name of Tom Cheney shot my father down in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and robbed him of his life and his horse and $150 in cash money, plus 2 California gold pieces that he carried in his trouser band. Here is what happened. That's the opening of a book called True Grit by Charles Portis. It's a lovely story. It's a western. They also made a film of it about an unusually single-minded 14-year-old girl who goes on a quest to avenge her father's murder. Highly recommend it, and wishing you all a great World Book Day.
Hello, this is Mrs. Gladwen, and I'm going to read you the opening to I Capture the Castle. I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. That is, my feet are in it. The rest of me is on the draining board, which I have padded out with our dog's blanket and the tea cosy. I can't say that I'm really comfortable, and there is a depressing smell of carbolic soap, but this is the only part of the kitchen where there is any daylight left. And I have found that sitting in a place where you have never sat before can be inspiring. I wrote my best poem while sitting on the hen house. Though even that isn't a very good poem. I've decided my poetry is so bad that I mustn't write any more of it. I absolutely loved Dodie Smith's novel I Capture the Castle. It's got a really engaging narrator called Cassandra, who lives with her really quite difficult family in a crumbling castle in Suffolk. They have absolutely no money, and her beautiful older sister is determined that she'll solve the family's problems by marrying well. Things look as though they're going to plan when some wealthy American neighbours move in, but inevitably all sorts of things make life much more complicated for Cassandra and her family. This is a story about love, it's a story about growing up, it's a story about sibling rivalry and tension between siblings, and it's a story about difficult parents. I absolutely loved it, and it's beautifully written, and it's got a really strong sense of place. So if you want a story with a bit of romance, a bit of adventure, and a brilliant narrator, I can't recommend I Capture the Castle enough.